Welcome to City Church's On Demand Messages. My name is Josh, and we're so glad you're tuning in whenever and wherever you're tuning in from. In fact, if it's your first time, we'd love to connect with you. You can text NEW to the number on the screen right now. We've got a free gift for you. Also, if you need prayer, we would love to pray with you. We believe that prayer is not our last resort, but it is our first response to what is going on in our lives and the lives of those around us. And so we'd love to join in with you. And so you can text next to the number on the screen. Also, if you'd like to invest financially into the mission of City Church to be a Jesus movement that awakens the soul in the city, you can text next as well to the number on the screen. We believe every Sunday morning when we gather in person and online, and we open up God's Word, that He has something special and specific for every one of us. And so as we lean into this week's message that you're about to watch, we pray that God opens up your heart to whatever He has for you, and we hope that you are encouraged by today's message. Again, if we can do anything for you, please let us know.
Well, this summer we have been in a series called Summer Attitude. If you were here the first week, I tried to talk Josh into calling it Summertude. I just like the way that sounds. I don't know why. But we are in a series called Summer Attitude. And if you're like me this morning, you probably could agree with this, that something about summer just changes us a little bit. Now, for some of you, it just changes you and you just sweat more. Like, that's just what summer does for you. You just are ready for cool weather. How many people are like, I'm over the heat, especially like we've just had some brutal heat. I'm okay with it. I'm totally fine with sweating it out. I enjoy the heat. Now, we lived in Florida for 15 years, and so like pretty much the heat we've been getting, that's just what we lived in pretty much year round. We had cool summer, hot summer, and oh my goodness, it's super hot summer. That's really just the seasons we had while I lived in Florida. So summer, when we get here in Georgia and we get to the summer, my attitude just kind of flips and changes. There's things that I just know are coming. I have 4 boys. We love just being in the water. It could be just a dirty creek on the side of the road. We're going to play in it, all right? We're okay with that. We like the heat. We like the water. We like going to the river, to the lakes, like fishing. Of course, we know, like, one of the things that, like, we just got to go back to the beach at least once, like going to the beach. Like, my anniversary with my wife is in the summer. We have a couple birthdays. And so everything about the summer just brings about these attitudes. But we find in Scripture just this space and place where Jesus is teaching, and it's called the Sermon on the Mount. And so Jesus begins to teach, and one of the things that exists in this sermon is this space called the Beatitudes. And so really, this is where we get this concept that we're talking about. Oh, how can we change our attitude? How can we change our posture as we move through this summer? And so in these Beatitudes, we see these different things. So we see a posture and we see a promise in this space. We see this exist in the Beatitudes. And so for the past few weeks, we've heard from Josh. We had a panel last week. We've had the incredible opportunity. Where are you at, man? I just so enjoyed hearing from you. It was just an incredible opportunity just to hear God unfold these spaces of this specific posture and promise. And so, blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are those who mourn, for they shall be comforted. Blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they shall be satisfied. And then we continue on. And for the next few weeks, we'll jump into these last few. But today, I get the opportunity to kind of shift us, right? Because in these first few spaces, we see kind of this emptying of ourselves. We see this emptying of who God is moving us into. And then we move into kind of, right, blessed are those who hunger and thirst. And now we're talking about what do we fill ourselves with? And so this morning, I want to move us into a space where we continue to live in this moment after we've gone to poor in spirit, mourn, meek, and remember that the posture is the pathway to the promise. And so still, even as we move into this next beatitude, we're holding on to this space that we understand the posture is the pathway to the promise. And so, like I just said, we begin to make this move in our posture in this next verse where we're moving from emptying now to this seeking of God. We move from the examination of self to seeking after God. So some feel that as we move into this beatitude, that this is one of the key beatitudes as we move forward. For in a sense, if we can get this one, it begins to open up the key to all the other beatitudes as we move through them. So again, this passage is in Matthew chapter 5, verse 6. It says, "Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they shall be satisfied. And so Josh and Wesley and the panel, they've spent this time the last few weeks and really moved us into this emptying kind of space where we empty ourselves and we realize that God is the thing that we need. And so now we move into how do we fill ourselves. As we look at this passage, there's some really easy words, I think, for us to pick up on. But where I kind of want to start this morning, as we look at this passage in Matthew chapter 5 and verse 6, is that last word. And that last word is satisfied. Satisfied. Now, if we take this word and we pull it out and we take it into its original meaning, the word really just means to be full. A life that is full. It is satisfied. Now, everyone has different things that like you are a part of, and in those little moments, you're like, man, this is great. I was just messing around there, and I was like, did you know that there's like videos you can watch on YouTube and of people like opening things and cutting things, and they're called like satisfying videos? They have millions of views, like millions. I mean, stuff like cutting Play-Doh in half, and like I'm just like, millions of people are watching this because it's satisfying. I mean, come on, but it's just this idea, right, of feeling full. For some of you, it's just a nice ice-cold Coke. Like, you just have a cold Coke. Some of you, it's your coffee this morning. You had your Coke, and you're full. You're ready to go. Some of you had that coffee. I had some espresso this morning. Praise Jesus for espresso. And I'm, But as we look at this word satisfied, in this time in history, we have to understand that Jesus is talking to specifically the Jews. And in this space, in this time, the Jews are under Roman rule. And so as he talks through this space, for this particular group, as they're under the Roman government, they felt foolish, honestly, when they knew where their next meal was coming from. Many of them suffered from poorness. And so for them, just a meal, and not only being physically full, but knowing they had their meal, it meant fullness of life. Not only were their bellies satisfied, but also their life was satisfied. I think this morning, whether you believe in Jesus or whether you don't, maybe you've never stepped foot in church before. Maybe this morning you're watching online right now with us. Welcome to those that are online with us. Maybe you're watching and you've never heard about who Jesus is or never stepped foot in a church. And I think no matter where you are in the space of Jesus, maybe this is your first time hearing, maybe you've been in church your whole life, you probably would just answer the question with yes. If I said, do you want life to feel full? Do you want a life that feels satisfied? You would say yes. I mean, no one in this room is going to say, you know what, I just want my life to feel empty. Like, my greatest desire is just to have an unsatisfied, empty life. Now, maybe there's spaces that we exist in life where we feel that way, but I don't think any of us would say that I don't want a full life. I don't think I have to convince anyone in this room that you want life to be full, that you don't want to feel emptiness. Because I think if we're honest, let's not put off the fact that over the last few years we've experienced some heavy things, haven't we? I was looking at research that's been done and how happiness and fullness is tracked in the last 2 years in our world, and we're seeing a decrease, right? We're seeing a decrease in happiness. We're seeing a decrease of feeling the life of satisfaction. We're seeing this decrease because of all the things that have happened in the last 2 years, whether it was health related to COVID, whether it was just this unrest racially that we just continue to see. And as a church, remember, we believe God is for all people. And we see things politically, this push and these things that happen. And we see, even as we look at our world economically right now, we see this financial. I mean, you've been to the gas stations, right? Like, you fill up your car and you're like, wow. You know, it's just all these little things that just impact life. And then you just boil down to the regular things of life, right? Marriages, relationships, kids, work, responsibility. Did you get any bills this week? Right? Like, I mean, those things that all just come at us. And if we all just sat in a space, I think as we think about the things that drive life, we still would say, I really want my life to feel full. I want my life to feel satisfied. So in the face of all these things, let me ask you this question before we just move forward. No matter who you are, whether you've known Jesus for a long time or a short time, or not at all, let me ask you this question today. Does your life feel full? Are you satisfied with life? I mean, right now, in this moment, as you think about yesterday, as you think about last week, as you think about last month, as you think about this morning, do you feel full? And I'm not talking about is your belly full, but does your life feel satisfied? Do you feel like your life is not empty? Answer that question right now, right in this moment. Answer that question. Because here's the thing. If we go back to that verse, and if we take away only the beginning of it and the end of it, and this is all we had, blessed are those who blank, for they shall be satisfied. The truth and reality of this passage is we all are headed here. We all want this. We all want it. Can we be in agreement today that we all want a life that feels satisfied? We all want, and when we look at this beatitude, we want this promise. I want it, you want it, the person beside you wants it, the person behind you wants it, the person when you driving home and you pass on the road and they cut you off and they're in a hurry somewhere, this is because they want to be satisfied. They want to be the first person in line at lunch. Like every person thinks that the next thing can bring the life that is satisfied. As we look at this passage and we look at the beginning of that verse, we kind of find two promises in this space. So blessed are those who blank, whatever it is, whatever they need to do, for they shall be satisfied. So we see blessed or blessed, and we see satisfied. And so that word blessed, we've talked about a lot. If I could really kind of frame it out, I think the best way to frame that word blessed is happy, independent of happenings. To be happy, independent of happenings. In other words, no matter what is happening around me, I'm independent of that. I still have happiness. So blessing is just this simple word of happy. So happy, independent of happenings. And again, that word satisfied means full life. So the promise in this passage, so if we just take the beginning of this passage, blessed are those who, and they will be satisfied. If we take those two pieces, I think that we could kind of boil it down to this, and this is on the screen, a full and happy life, independent of happenings. How many of you would sign up for that life? Right? A life that is full, a life that is happy, independent of happenings. So no matter what happens, my life feels full, my life feels happy. I think if we could all just be in agreement, I would sign up for that. I would take that. I would swing for the fences. I would do anything I could to have that life. It looks good, right? Sign me up. Give me this. I'll take it. It sounds too good to be true. Have you ever heard something and you're like, that sounds too good to be true? Like, that's way too good to be true. Like it's when, man, I know this is a terrible analogy, but I'm going to use it anyways. It's like when you go into Sam's. Like, have you ever gone into Sam's before and shopped and they sell everything in bulk and you get all this stuff and you're like, yeah, we just really did good. And then you pay the bill and you're like, nah, that was way too good to be true. Like, we got all this stuff and it was just this. I don't know if this is really going to work out like I thought. And before you know it, you got 35 cans of something that you tried at the space. They were giving out free samples, and it was really good. But like 2 days later, you're like, I got 35 of these. What am I going to do with them, right? It's too good to be true, right? Something like this, right, in life, a life that is full and happy, independent of happenings, it sounds too good to be true. And so if we could say today, and we could agree online, here in person, this is something I would swing for the fences for. This is something I would chase after. What do I have to do? I think that we have to remember how to get to that promise. Remember, we've said it over and over again. The posture is the pathway to the promise. It's the posture that we sit in that leads us to the promise. How many of you, when you were young, I feel like this has changed some, but how many of you are, when you were young, can you remember sitting at the dinner table and your parents telling you to sit a certain way? How many of you out here put some little hands in line? Can you remember those days? Like, get your elbows off the table. Sit up. Don't slouch. Do you remember those? Like, the posture was important, right? Why? Why was it important to do that thing? And I didn't learn why that was important until I started dating, you know? I started dating, and I was like, oh, I see why this is important now, because this girl right here is watching me. And the way that I was sitting at home the other day does not look very attractive right now, So the posture was important to the path, like it led us somewhere. So the posture is not, in this case, right, how we sit. The posture is our life, our attitude, right? This attitude, this heart, this posture of our heart, it leads us to the promise. I think we already get part of this posture, because if we put this verse back up here with another blank, blessed are those who hunger and thirst for what? Blank, for they shall be satisfied. Like, we get this part of the posture. We get hunger and thirst, right? How many of you somewhere today, if it hasn't already, but how many of you today, your body is going to tell you it's time to eat, right? It's time to drink, right? Hunger and thirst is something that we get. And again, remember, Jesus here in this space, he's speaking to the Jews at this time under Roman rule. They really understood this. They really understood hunger and thirst, right? I don't know if we get it, but I don't know here in America if we can really understand the depth of like hunger to the point of like, I feel like I'm going to die. I don't want to discount, because I know that the reality is someone could be in this room who is in that space or has gone through that space, but for the most part, many of us in the room, like truly, like we understand hunger, but we're very easily, quickly able to satisfy that hunger. Same with thirst. Like, if you have kids in this room, like, you've heard this. I'm so thirsty, I think I'm going to die. And I'm like, oh, my gosh. Are you kidding me right now? Like, I'm so thirsty. It's like you don't get it. Like, you don't understand. You might be thirsty, but you're not going to die. I promise. We're not going to let that happen to you, okay? But I think that we can understand this posture, right? Those who hunger and thirst, we get hunger and thirst. We understand it because, again, right, it resonates easily with us because hunger and thirst are always a revolving and repetitive door. Tomorrow when you wake up, right, at some point your body's going to say it's time to eat. Your body's going to say it's time to drink. Like, your body is going to tell you, and it's a repetitive thing. It's important to remember as we think about the posture for this promise, this is a repetitive posture. Just like hunger and thirst, just like satisfying that hunger and thirst, it is repetitive, right? You're going to be thirsty, you're going to be hungry, and you're going to take care of it. It's showing up every day. I think that we have to understand that Jesus is saying the same for our life as he uses this example, because we all have a hunger and thirst for a life that feels full. We all have that hunger. We all have that thirst. We all have that desire for a life that feels full. And so the question is, what are we consuming in order to satisfy that hunger and thirst? I'm not talking about food. I'm not talking about drink. But what are the things that you are consuming to make your life feel full and to make your life feel satisfied? What are the things that you're taking in? Because if we can all be in agreement, right, that we're thirsting after a full life, or hungering after a full life, we have this posture already, then we're consuming something in order to feel that way. Can we all be real for a moment, right? There's so many things that we can fill ourselves up with today. I don't know if ever in the history of man, of woman, that we can have so many things to fill our lives with. We all hunger and thirst for life to be satisfying, so we're going to satisfy that hunger. We're going to satisfy that thirst somehow. The question is, with what? Is it with all the countless things we have on screens? I mean, have you been on any streaming services on the TV lately? There are a bajillion. That's not a number, I don't think, but there are a bajillion shows and movies. Like, you could sit for years and never watch the same thing twice. Or you can sit for years and watch the same thing over and over and over again, like many of us do, right? Watch one show 50 times a year. But, right, we can consume the countless things on screens. Political agendas. We can hunger and thirst for what we feel like we should put out. Hate. You say, Warren, I don't know if that's a real thing. Like, people consume and take hate to feel, yes. People put down others so they can feel better about themselves. Work, sports. Like, the Braves are doing pretty good right now, right? So they're easy to follow and they're easy to like satisfy that hunger and thirst, right? Social media, right? Man, I would encourage you this morning, if you have any ability to see how much time you spend on your phone, like in your settings and your screen time, and whether it's, I would encourage you, like, go look at how much time you spend, and go look and see how much time you spend doing what. Because we're going to satisfy the desire we have to have a full life. We're going to hunger and thirst for something. We're going to consume something. So social media, material things, money, sex, addictions. Addictions like video games. You thought I was going somewhere else with addictions, didn't you? Yeah, you're like, where he's going to addictions. I know what he's going to say. Video games. Like, adults, like, you're not off the hook here, right? I like video games. I could sit and play video games for hours. I have kids that play video games, and so I can make that excuse, right? I can make myself numb to what's going around to feel satisfied. Video games, pornography, social media, drugs, alcohol, shopping. Yeah. It can be an addiction. And it's so easy now, right? You can buy something, and it shows up in 2 days. You don't have to talk to nobody. You don't have to get somebody's opinion about it. I mean, unless you want to read reviews, right? You can see those. You can just, boom, it's there. I think that sometimes we hunger and thirst for a life that's satisfied, that we look for it in our spouse. We look for it in our kids. We get stuck in this mind, right, of the grass has to be greener. If I can just go after this, if I can just do this, if I can just consume this, life would be full, life would be satisfied. Because the truth is, we all want that desire. So we all have, your posture is already there for hungering and thirsting. It's there. You're already hungering, you're already thirsting. That posture already exists. So let me ask you this question and ask myself this question. What am I filling my life with? C.S. Lewis gave some incredible words when it came to this. He said, if I find in myself a desire which no experience in this world can satisfy, the most probable explanation is that I was made for another world. Because let's be honest for a minute. All those things I just mentioned, can you be real with yourself for a moment? Have they actually ever satisfied life? Have they actually ever come through? Have they actually sustained a life that is satisfied, a life that is full? Because here's what Jesus said. What does fill us? What should I hunger and thirst for? Matthew 5:6. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst. Here it is. For righteousness. For those that hunger and thirst for righteousness, they will be satisfied. They will be full. When we hunger and thirst for righteousness, and you're like, righteousness? That doesn't sound very fulfilling. Like if we left today and I just said, hey guys, if you want a life that's full and satisfied, go hunger and thirst for righteousness, see you later. You'd be like, what in the world? Like, why? What is righteousness? What am I supposed to hunger? I don't get it. See, what we can't confuse here, though, is this. This is what we can't confuse. Jesus is not saying that we can become righteousness by our efforts of hungering and thirsting for it. He's not saying that I can do this, or that it is our righteousness or right living that leads to a life that is satisfied. I think that Paul gives us a great example of this understanding of what to hunger and thirst for when we talk about righteousness. And so just a little background on Paul. Paul, one of the ones who helps launch the church. And so this incredible man who just, if we go through the New Testament, wrote much of it. And so he has this outstanding just background. But behind that background that we see is, in the beginning, a Jew who was devout. And so remember, Jesus is speaking to these Jews, and so they would agree with who Paul was. He was devout. It seemed like he was the perfect fit for a life that was satisfied. And so this is what Paul says as we look at him, as he seeks out what he thought was righteousness. In Philippians chapter 3, verse 4 through 6, he says, though I myself, talking about Paul, have reason for confidence in the flesh also. And so Paul is saying, I have reason to be confident in my righteousness, in my flesh, and who I am. If anyone else thinks he has reason for confidence in the flesh, I have more. Circumcised on the 8th day. And so he's going through this list of what would make someone have a life that is full as a Jew in this time. Circumcised on the 8th day of the people of Israel, the tribe of Benjamin, a Hebrew of Hebrews, as to the law, a Pharisee, as to zeal, a persecutor of the church, as to righteousness under the law, blameless. So like if we stepped away and we looked at this, we would say, okay, he's got all the things that he needs. He's got all the pieces in the right place. He's got to have a life that's full. And so those Jews that day that Jesus was speaking to, this is what they were chased after. And right, history changes, things move, and we all have things that we chase after. And so this is what Paul chased. And Paul lists out all that he could do to make anyone assume, like, here's the things that I thought would make my life full. And so what I want you to do right now in this moment is mentally make a list. What are the things? What is your list? What are the things that you said, hey, my life is full when I bang, 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 like list them out in your head. And what I'd love to do is just share with you a story. Because I have a list. It's funny that God placed, I believe, me in such a time as this. In this moment, in the space of this verse. For me, my summer attitude, like I said, it changes. My posture maybe, even it shifts a little bit. I love summer. I love being in the water. I love watching my boys catch crawfish in the creeks and fish and swim. And I love being able to spend time with my wife for our anniversary. And as a matter of fact, this past week, Lynn's helped me out. Thursday was our Friday. Friday was our anniversary. Guys, I know. 17 years we've been married, which is incredible. So we've been together, dated for 4. We've been together for over 20 years. Like, that's crazy to think of. I'm getting old, guys. Some of you are like, yeah, right, shut your mouth. But as I even think about summer, I think about our anniversary, and we always just make an attempt to always spend a couple days with no kids during this time in the season, just to be together, just the two of us. And as a matter of fact, this past week, and we had those 2 days, we stayed in this super fancy room. Check out our super fancy room. We went camping, right? This is my wife's idea, guys. Like, come on. This was our romantic space right here in the tent. We stayed in a tent. And I will tell you, like, this was a beautiful place. We were on Lake Chattooga. I think I said that all right. It's near Hiawassee, Georgia. The lake actually sits half in North Carolina, half in Georgia. Our campsite, if you can kind of see actually the water, we had a little walkway that went down to our own little spot right there on the water. And we have campers all around us, of course. We had our own little fire pit, and we got to grill hot dogs. Like, it just was refreshing. It was nice. We really enjoyed it. And we got to do some other things as well. Like, I wanted to share with you some of the other things we got to do. We got to go whitewater rafting. We got to go, what else did we do? We got the opportunity to go zip lining. We were near the Nantahala River. The stars were absolutely incredible during the night. You can see that picture in a minute. The kayaking in the lake as the sun went down. I'd only put the fish on there just because I wanted to be prideful and show you the huge fish I caught. That's the only reason I put that on there. So that's just me being prideful. So that's the only reason. But we got to fish. Like, we just had such an incredible time together. And I'll be honest with you, I felt full. I just felt full. Like, life just felt good. So Wednesday morning we woke up, packed up camp, and then we began to head back. And when you don't have kids with you, you can just do what you want, right? You can stop. And so, like, I'm that guy that as we're driving, Google Maps is up, and, like, I see this little hole in the wall thing of water, and I'm like, we're stopping. Like, let's get out, get the fishing poles out. And so we found this trail, and so we take this trail, and you could actually see this picture right here. We take this trail, about a 1.5 mile trail to just 3 different waterfalls. And one of the waterfalls you can actually get out and swim in. I mean, it honestly doesn't even look like you're in Georgia. It was absolutely beautiful. The water was like 55 degrees, and so, like, just jumping in, take your breath away, but kind of refreshing at the same time. I don't know how to explain it. But it just was a beautiful way to end the trip. And I felt full. It was so nice. And then our trip took a turn. 4 hours later, this became our trip. We were, bear with me. We were coming from Buford, going to Lawrenceville. Decided just to go a different way. I don't know. You don't have kids, you just do what you want. And we're on State Road 20, and we're heading south. And a car coming north, going the opposite direction of us, began to swerve. And in the slowest motion of moment that I can ever picture in my head, I see this car come across the median. And in my head, I'm thinking, how do I miss this car? He's coming straight at us. Hit the brakes. The car, instead of coming at us, moves, and we T-bone the car, and airbags go off. Our car comes up off the ground a little and flips around the other direction. And we spin into another car, and that car hits another car. And everything that made me full was now empty. I felt empty. I got out of the car and immediately I began to think, how do I fill it back up? How do I make myself feel better right now? And so I'm on the phone with insurance and I'm on the phone with whoever I can talk to help this moment be better. And the last thing that I went to was Jesus. Why? I was hungry and thirsting for the wrong things. It's crazy to me how God works, that he would put me in front of this message and he would say, Warren, your relationship with your wife is important. But it's not important than your relationship with me. So I stand here today and I tell you this, not as someone who has it all together, but I tell you this as someone who's right with you. I want a life that feels full, and I chase things sometimes. And my relationship with my wife is incredible, but it's better when Jesus is first. It's better when I'm seeking the righteousness of God. And in the rest of this sermon, Jesus says, but seek first the kingdom of God, and all these things will be added to you. In other words, as we seek God first, everything that comes behind is even better. It's even fuller. It's even more satisfying. It's even better than we could ever think it was. Because if we live our life in a space that we chase the things that are not God, when we find ourselves in this space where we're in these moments of pain and hurt, the happenings change our happiness. The happenings change our fullness. The happenings change that feeling that we are holding so tight to. Man, 4 hours, life changed very fast. I'm very thankful, honestly, that I can be here this morning in this space. And I don't want to take lightly the fact that car accidents just bring up things in every person. And so I know there's those things that exist. But I can tell you that, man, I believe that God put me right here in this moment for right now. That he's given me a testimony to share with you, to be real with you, that we can hunger and thirst for a lot of things. And they might feel like they make us full, but the only thing that can make us full is Jesus. Paul says this in Philippians chapter 3, verse 7, 9. Remember, he gives us that. Here's the things that I chased. Here's the things that I went. In verse 7 through 9, he says, but whatever gain I had, I counted as loss for the sake of Christ. Indeed, I count everything as lost because of the surpassing worth of knowing Christ Jesus my Lord. So there's that pursuit of righteousness, to know Jesus more. For his sake, I've suffered the loss of all things, and I count them as rubbish. That word rubbish is translated as animal excrement. It's poop. I count everything as rubbish in order that I might gain Christ. I hunger and thirst. I put everything else aside so that I may gain Jesus, so that I may know him more and be found in him, not having a righteousness of my own that comes from the law. Remember that thing I pursued, but that which comes through faith in Christ, the righteousness from God that depends on faith. Deeply joyful and spiritually whole are those who actively seek Jesus. And in doing so, we discover that he alone can completely satisfy our soul. See, here's the thing. We find everything we need in everything God is. Everything we need is found in everything that God is. Listen today, maybe you're saying, I'm just not satisfied with life. Let me ask you, what are you hungering and thirsting for? Saturday, I went up to Safe House, and I was just going through my message, and this song that we want to sing over you, I just was listening to repetitively, and I'm sitting up in Safe House just crying, and I'm sure people around us like, dude, the coffee's good, but it's not that good. Like, man. And so I just want to share this song with you because I think that sometimes we just need to be reminded that the things we're hungering and thirsting for, they're not satisfying what we truly need. And so just listen to these words as we sing them over you, and then we close.
I can feel a world of difference. Suddenly the room is shifting. I'm finding it again, the wonder of your presence. I never want to leave communion. Just want to be where you're moving. Caught up in the joy and wonder of your presence. Oh, I am coming back to first love, coming back to Jesus, coming back to you. No more going through the motions, you're my one devotion. I'm coming back to you. And nothing matters more to me. You're all I need. Nothing matters more to me. Nothing matters more to me. You're all I need. Nothing matters more to me. You're all I need. Nothing matters more to me. You're all I need. Oh, I am coming back to first love, coming back to Jesus, coming back to you. Oh, no more going through the motions, you're my one devotion. I'm coming back to you. Oh, I'm coming back to you.
Matthew 5:6 says, blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they shall be satisfied. A full and happy life, independent of happenings, is possible with Jesus. Pursuing him. You say, Warren, how? Be here. Be in his word. Be here. Be in a space to worship with others. Be in a city group. Find more about that as we move into next semester. Spend time in prayer. Surround yourself with people who encourage you towards Jesus. Let me lead us at this moment just into communion. And as we think about the satisfaction that we have in Jesus, it starts, I think, here that he gave his life for us. And so I want us to understand that as we talk about righteousness, that it's not what I do to be right with God, but it's what Jesus has done for us that makes us right with God. And so he gave us his son who died on the cross, who shed his blood, and his body was broken for us. And so at this time, I'd love for you to take communion if you're a follower of Jesus this morning, and remember what he's done. If you don't have communion, we have tables in the back with city builders. You can grab communion there. And if you don't know Jesus this morning, I'd love for you just to sit in this moment and know that you can have a life that is full because of what Jesus has done.